Hello my dear students, welcome to computer science class. Let us continue with our chapter, that is control statements. In our previous video classes, we have seen the topic, the do while statement, and then we have also seen the difference between while and do while. I think you got an idea how to write the differences, and one more thing I wanted to tell is, in your textbook, in the difference between while and do while, some two more extra points have been added which are not the differences. Those 2 points are actually the same. So you need not to write those 2 points. In our previous video, what slide I have shown you, the differences, only those points is sufficient to write for the examination. Kindly make the correction in your textbook. Okay. Now I think we have also started with the topic, that is the for loop. I think only little bit of introduction we have seen about the for loop. Now what exactly this for loop is and when to use the for loop. So this for loop is usually being referred to as an fixed execution looping statement, whereas the while was being referred to as an pre-testing looping statement and do while was being referred as an post-testing looping structure. Same way, the for loop is being referred to as an fixed execution looping structure. Why we refer it as an fixed execution? Because now when we are going to use this for loop, because when we know in advance how many times a set of statements should be repeatedly executed. So if we know in advance how many times the loop has to be iterated, then for loop will be the best suited looping structure. Okay, suppose for example, I want 5 iteration. I want to iterate my loop, or iterate in the sense what? Repetition. Okay, for the 5 times. Okay, like for I is equal to n less than or equals to 5. I know my loop has to be iterated for 5 times. So when you know the exact number, how many times the iteration should take place, then we can go for the for loop. Otherwise, in case of we can also use the while and the do while. I hope you are able to understand. Now let us see the general syntax and the flowchart of that is for loop. So this is what just I have explained here. Okay, here in case of the for loop, we have the 3 parts. The first one is initialization, the next one is the condition, the third one is increment or the decrement. Remember that this again for is a keyword wherein these 3 parts has to be separated by the semicolon. Okay, this is exactly the syntax. Okay, so for within the parenthesis we have 3 parts. After that, each part has to be separated by semicolon, close a parenthesis, and if this particular for condition, if it is true, then these set of statements will be executed. Now for y'all, initializations you may not understand, so I have taken one example here. Initialization will be always done with an assignment operator. Say for an example here, initialization part means here it is I is equal to 1. So this is the first part of the for loop, that is initialization. Now this is separated, okay, by semicolon and then followed by the condition. Now here initialization is nothing but it is making use of assignment operator that is used to set that is loop control variable. I is a loop control variable we can refer, or we can even refer it as a counter variable. Why we call it as counter variable? Because this is a variable which is exactly completely controlling this particular loop. Therefore we can refer it as loop control variable or just a counter variable. Understood? Followed by when we come to the condition part here, that is condition may be any kind of relational expression, okay, which determines when the loop will exit. Suppose I said here I is equal to less than or is equal to 5. So when my loop will exit when it comes to the 6th iteration, when I becomes 6, okay. So whether 6 is less than or is equal to 5, the condition is fails. So at this point of a time, actually my loop fails. That means for loop fails, hence the control comes out of the next statement, comes out of this for loop and control goes to the next statement. So therefore this condition actually determines when the loop would exit. Moving on to the third part, which is an increment or decrement operator. This defines how exactly this counter variable changes every time, whether it is incrementing or whether it is decrementing. Now here I plus plus, obviously it is an increment operator. See here, always initialization takes place only once and condition will be checked until the condition is being failed. So many number of times the condition will be executed. Similarly, the increment also will be executed. So I hope you are able to understand, and this for loop keeps on executing as long as this particular condition is true. Once the condition becomes false, the control comes to the next statement. So on satisfying this condition, what exactly we are trying to do? We are trying to print the I value. I hope you are able to understand. So that is what is initialization, condition and increment or the decrement operator. Understood? Now moving on to the flow chart here. So here we are not completely writing that again for I is equal to 1 less than or. In fact, we are just writing as for what is our counter variable, that is I. So I is equal to initial, IV stands for initial value, up to final value. What it is final value? FV stands for final value. Up to initial to final value, this particular loops has to keep on repeating. Understood? That means I can write here I is equal to 1 to 5. Understood? I is equal to 1 to 5. Until I is equal to 1 to 5, your loop has to completely iterated. So therefore, in generally, we are now here, we know that 5 we have written, but this one for loop shouldn't stick to only this number. No, therefore, we have taken in general, that is initial value to the final value. Suppose the given condition true here, then these set of statements will be executed. Okay, and then the for loop will get incremented and the for loop repeats. How increment will happen? I'll show with examples here. Again the repetition takes place. Again the condition will be checked. On satisfying, again set of these statements will be executed. Now once this condition becomes fails, what happened? The control automatically jumps to the next counter and then next statement here. This is next counter, in the sense it is a repetition, children. It's not the next statement, it's a repetition. Okay, on satisfying this particular condition, set of statements, and the next counter means what exactly? I gets incremented and then again I value will be checked. Again condition satisfy, increment. Now if this condition becomes false, automatically the control from here to it will get attached to here, wherein the control goes to the next statement when the condition becomes false. I hope children you are able to understand. Now moving on to the working of for loop, very important here. So here you see the initialization is an assignment statement that has to be set to the loop control variable. So this is just now with the flow chart and the just now with the flow chart and the general syntax what I have explained. So these are the same points only. Moving on to the working of the for loop. This is very important. They will be asking you for 5 marks. Explain briefly the working of for loop. So in that case you should write the general syntax, you should draw the flow chart, okay, and plus you should explain all these points, previous points as well as these points you have to explain. Very important this is. So usually the initialization is executed only once. Now let me explain this one. So as I said, these are the 3 parts as I said, right? So this initialization is executed only once the I value will be set to 1. It's not every time. Okay. So this initial value for the counter variable, it is executed only one time. Once after this one, the control automatically goes to the second part where the condition is being checked. If it is true, the loop continues. Otherwise, the loop exits of this particular for loop and the control automatically jumps to the next statement, as I said. Next, moving on to the next one, statement is executed as usual. Understood? And this particular true part of the statement has to be enclosed under the braces. At last what happens, see here. Now this one, once I becomes 1, 1 is less than or is equal to 5, your condition is true. Once the condition is true, the control will not jump to the third part. In fact, on satisfying, the control makes an entry into this particular loop and then it will execute the true part of this for loop. After execution, that means after printing the value of I here, the control goes to the third part, that is increment or the decrement. Understood? Okay, I'll repeat here. Once the condition has been set, first I value will get initialized to 1. After that, control jumps to the checking for conditions. On satisfying condition, the control makes an entry into the loop and then this particular statement will be executed. After that, the control goes to the increment value, increment or the decrement part it will go. Now, since I is incremented, I will be incremented by value 1. Therefore, this time I becomes what? 2. Again, control what it does? Control goes to the condition checking. Control will never come to the initialization. Initialization happens only once. So, control comes to the condition checking. So, whether 2 is less than or is equal to 5. Yes, your condition satisfies. Again, control makes an entry into the loop and prints the value of I. Again, the control goes to the, that is third part, that is increment or decrement. So therefore, I was telling here, initialization happens only once. So condition will, how many times it happens? Until it condition is true. Now I know it is 5. Therefore, I can say how many iterations? 6 iteration takes place. Up to 5th iteration, condition becomes true. Once the I value will become 6, for the 6th iteration, the condition will become false. I hope you are able to understand. So therefore, this part, the initialization part and this increment or decrement, these parts are optional. Okay, they are optional. You may write this initialization, okay, or you may skip it. But a semicolon must be there. They can remain empty in all the cases. But a semicolon sign must be there compulsory in order to differentiate that this is initialization condition and the increment or decrement. Okay, then initialization part can have more than one expression. Now let me explain this with an example here. Now see here. Now this is a general format for I is equal to 1, I less than or is equal to 5 and I plus plus. So how many, why I have included this is curly braces? Because I have more than one statement as a true statement. Initially I will become 1, 1 is less than or equal to 5. Yes, the condition satisfies. Once the condition satisfies, it makes an entry into the loop, print the value of I and print the thank you also it prints. Again the control goes to the increment. I becomes what? 2. 2 is less than 5. Yes. Again print value 2. Again print thank you. Like this it will be holding. What I am saying is this initialization part is an optional. Initialization is also optional. Increment or decrement part is also optional. Now you can see here, but they have to be separated by semicolon. Now here already outside this for loop only I have initialized I to be as 1. So already I have initialized. So no need to reinitialize it in the for. But you have to separate it with the semicolon. Then I should be less than or equal to 5. Then semicolon and I plus plus. Now this is also a valid one because initialization part is an optional. If you are whatever the counter variable, this I is a counter variable. Whatever the counter variable you have used, you can initialize this is within the for loop. Or you can even initialize it outside the for loop. Once initialization is fine, enough, understood. You need not to reinitialize it again. I hope you are able to understand. Now coming to the next example, here you can see it is not compulsory that if you are using the counter variable as I here, it should be defined, it should be declared outside the for loop. It is not compulsory. Whenever you are using the counter variable, its data type, you can initialize even within the, you can declare it even within the for loop. It's not that directly it should start like I is equal to 1. If int I, if it is not declared earlier, at the time of using this counter variable, you can initialize, you can declare this one I with its data type also. This is also a valid one. So that is integer I is equals to 1 semicolon I less than or equal to 10 I plus plus. So that whenever the compiler encounters this one, it will understand I is a counter variable of data type integer and allocates for I how many? That is 2 bytes it will allocate. I hope children you are able to understand. Then next followed by is what? Now look, coming to this part only. Here if you observe, I have given a semicolon. Remember, Looping statement shouldn't have any semicolons. Like for example, while. After while condition, no semicolon. In case of simple, that is while condition while statement I'm talking. Now when in case of do while statements, the while condition has to terminate with the semicolon, because when it reaches for the last condition, that time the condition has to fail. Understood? Similarly, whenever we write any for statement, it shouldn't contain any semicolon. Now what if it is semicolon has been written here? So in this code what happens, I is initialized to 1, I should be less than or is equal to 10, and I is always incrementing by 1. So since the semicolon has been placed after this for, it means that for this for loop there is no true statement, there is no statement existing. That means what? When we don't insert any semicolon means it says that on satisfying this condition, the true part of the statement, this statement is executed. Once the compiler encounters this semicolon, it indicates that it is the end of this statement, and it will never treat this statement as a part of the for loop. So therefore, even the condition is satisfied also, the value of the counter variable, that is I, will never print, because the compiler has understood that is end of this statement, and this cout is not at all a part of this particular for loop. So therefore, after for loop when you write, it shouldn't have any semicolon. I am just giving you different forms of hint, where different forms of examples where you can you may, while executing the programs or while writing the programs, you may commit mistakes. So you shouldn't never put any semicolon after the for loop, because execution will not take place. The true part of the for loop will not execute at all. Therefore semicolon shouldn't be there. Now moving on to the next example here, we can have more than one initialization part. As I was last point I was explaining, using the comma operator we can specify more than one expression in one of the fields included in the for loop. That means what? Here I can see here initialization, two variables I have taken. Understood? That is int. Right now I have not declared the variables x and y at the starting point. Now when I am using it, I have declared it. So x is 0, y is equal to 0. Now to indicate x, these two are both are of type, both are coming under the initialization part, then it has to be separated by the comma operator. Now once it encounters the semicolon, it will understand that this is the first part of the for loop, that is initialization. Then it comes to the condition, that is x plus y should be less than or is equal to 10. Now here what we are having? Again we are having the increment. Understood? Now here if I putting the semicolon means what? That means what? It's indication for the compiler that it's an end of this particular statement. Though on satisfying this condition, if any other statement I had written, it will never execute. Therefore this semicolon should not be written. I hope children you are able to understand. Now coming to the one of the programming example of the for loop, that is to print the n natural numbers. Here actually I have written only the logic here. Okay, to print the n natural numbers. Here I will be explaining how exactly the for loop works. See here, I am initializing the n value with the 7. I want to print the n natural numbers, but here I have asked the user to enter the value of enter the number, and therefore the user have entered as 7. So I am assuming the 7 to be as the value of n. Now when I write this for loop, okay, I am using the counter variable as I. You can use a counter variable like anything, like x, y, you can use anything, a. Okay, so here I have used it I, and I am saying the compiler that my I loop, that is I counter variable, is initially having its value as holding its value as 1. After that I am terminating with a semicolon followed by. So initialization happens only once. Once the control comes here, it checks the condition. What is the condition I am referring to? I should be less than or is equal to n. That means what is the value of I, children? I value is 1. Whether 1 is less than or is equal to, what is the value of n? That is 7. 1 is less than or is equal to 7? Yes, the condition is true. Once this condition is true, the control makes an entry into the for loop. Therefore, I have given the numbering. First, initialization takes place. Secondly, the condition is checked, and on satisfying, the loop makes an entry into this particular for loop. Then here what I am doing, and I am printing the value of I children here. That is what value I will be getting here as firstly as 1 because I is holding 1, right? Now after that, where does the control goes? Control will not come to this part. Control jumps to the third part of the for loop where incrementation takes place. Increment takes place of the I value. Now after incrementing, what will be the I value? I value will become what? This time 2. Now after that, from here the control jumps to the condition to check. Remember. So now 2 is less than or is equal to n. It checks for the condition. It will never go to the initialization part because initialization will happen only once. So whether 2 is less than or is equal to 7, yes, your condition satisfies. So if so, again it makes an entry into the loop. Again value 2 will be printed. Again increment takes place. Again when increment takes place, I becomes 3. 3 is less than or is equal to 7. Condition is true. Again 3 value will be printed. Again increment takes place. Like this, your for loop keeps on repeating until this condition becomes fails. When I reaches 7, whether 7 is less than or equal to 7, yes, condition is true. Then prints the value of 7. Then prints the value of I, that is 7. After that again increment takes place. Now I becomes what? 8. Whether 8 is less than or is equal to n, condition becomes fails. Once the condition is fail, automatically the control comes out of this for loop and control goes to the next statement. What is there after the for loop? So therefore thank you will be printed. I hope children you are able to understand how the for loop was. Okay. Now this is how I have written the iteration. I think I explained till the third iteration. See here, after third iteration, where exactly the control goes? Control goes to the incrementation. So now this time I becomes what? 4. 4 is less than or equal to 7? Yes. So once 4 is less than or equal to 7, the control makes an entry into the loop wherein I am printing the value of I, that is 4. After that, control goes again to the third part of the statement. Here I have written the first initialization, I didn't write. Initialization I have written here. Okay. So initialization will not happen every time, right? Only condition and incrementation part will be executed. So once I becomes incremented 5, so 5 is fifth iteration, 5 is less than 7, yes, condition is true, so 5 is printed. After that again incrementation, 6 value of 5 would become 6, 6 is less than 7, condition becomes true, so 6 will be printed. After that again it goes to the incrementation part. I becomes 7, 7 is less than or equal to, at least it is equals to, condition becomes true, 7 is printed. Again I gets incremented, that's 8. Whether 8 is less than or is equal to 8 children? No, the condition is false. Once condition is false, it comes out to the comes out of the for loop and therefore the next statement is printed. Therefore you can see this particular output. When I enter the number as 7, the n natural numbers up to the n condition. So what I have given the n condition as 7. Therefore up to 7 all the natural numbers will be printed. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Add the 8th one, condition fails. Since condition is failing, it will not go to the printing. It will not make an entry into the loop. Therefore I cannot print the 8 here. I hope children you are understanding. As soon as the condition is false, from here only the control jumps to the outside, that is the outside the for structure. I hope you are understanding. Therefore I got here next statement as thank you. Okay, moving on to the next program. Now before moving on to the next program, let me execute that program and show you children. That is the natural number. Yes, this is the same program what I have written. Okay. Now here I'll ask the user to enter the value. When I compile, I got 0 errors. Okay, and just I'll run the code. When I run the code, let me enter the value as 10 here. Okay, let me enter the value as 10. When I enter that, see here, I'm getting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. up to n natural numbers, and then finally I am getting thank you. You may ask why it is coming in this way. Okay, why it's not coming in the sidewise? See here, but I have, after I have given the endl, children. I have given the endl. If I don't give it in the endl, if I don't give endl, it would have been printed me 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 10, and then within the same line thank you. But after every time the I value is printed, every time it is also executing the endl operator here. Therefore, every time I can see the I value in the new line. Finally, the thank you. I hope you are able to understand. Now let me give the semicolon and show you here whether the for loop executes or not. I'll give the semicolon here, and I'll just okay, just I'll run it. Now I'll give the value as 4 here. I'll give, okay, when I give 4, you see I'm not getting the exact all the values, right? I'm not getting this way. This is a wrong output. Am I right? I want you to print all the n natural numbers there. So therefore, what is exactly happening here? It is not executing. It is not executing the true part of the statement at all. So once the I becomes 5 here, it is encountering I value anyway, it is holding 5, right? So it is not executing the true part. In fact, the control is executing this particular thank you. Understood? It means that it is considering that this value, this statement is not a part of this for loop, but actually this statement is a part of this particular for loop on satisfying the given condition. I hope you are able to understand. Now coming back to the next program here, children. Now this is a program to print all the odd numbers up to the given limit by using for loop. Okay, we have to print all the odd numbers. Okay, I think previous examples we have seen how to print the even numbers there. Okay, so this is the odd number program. So here I have taken the header file's main function, okay, and I have declared 2 variables of type integer, clear screen, and then we are asking the user to enter the limit. Okay, enter the limit in the sense you can the higher range up to what number you want to print all the odd numbers. Okay, and then I'm reading the value, and how I'm setting my loop. Odd numbers actually starts from 1, children. Am I right? Odd numbers actually starts from 1. So therefore I'm setting my counter variable I is equals to 1. And up to what condition the loop has to iterate? Up to the n condition. N in the sense, now I might have entered here as 15. I will give here as 15. So n value holds 15. So up to, now this is also I is less than or is equal to n in the sense I is less than or equal to 15. Up to that iteration, up to this limit, it has to repeat the loop on satisfying the condition. Okay, and then why did I write this I is equal to I plus 2? Why not I plus plus? What we want actually to print all the odd numbers. Suppose if I write I plus plus, after 1 it should have become 2, where 2 is what? It is an even number and I don't want to print the even numbers at all. Therefore, I am incrementing the value of I by 2, not by 1. Understood? I am incrementing the value of I by 2, not by 1. Therefore, I am specifying here as I is equal to I plus 1. So, increment happens, how it happens? I value currently was 1. So, 1 plus 2, first calculation happens and then it will assign to the left hand side. Therefore, the new value of I will become what? That is next time it becomes 3. That is 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. I hope children you are able to understand. Now look at here, at the first iteration what happens? Initially I am assuming the value of enter the limit, I have entered it as 15. Initially the counter variable is I is equal to 1. This initialization happens only once. After that control goes to the second part, that is to check the condition whether 1 is less than or is equal to 15. Yes, the condition is true. If this condition is true, this is trying to execute the true part of this for statement. That is printing the value of this particular I. Remember, Okay, the very next statement of the for loop, the very next statements of while or do while or if, okay, those will be considered as the true part of the statement, true part of that particular for loop or the while loop or do while loop. Okay, now here you see, so 1 will be printed because it is asking to print the value of I. So after that, where exactly the counter goes? The counter comes to the increment or the decrement part, wherein how the value of I is incremented. Here actually it is I plus plus I have written, it should be I is equal to I plus 3, I plus 2. When it becomes next the value of I, what it becomes? It becomes what? 3. So once the value of I becomes 3, again it goes for checking the condition. Coming to the next slide here, here I have given the explanation. Okay, so I becomes what? I plus 2. So therefore this time for the second iteration I value will be 3. 3 is less than or is equal to 15, children. Yes, the condition is true. So on satisfying, it prints the value of I3. Again increment. So this is what is the value here? 3 plus I value is currently 3. 3 plus 2 I value will become 5. When it goes to the next iteration for the repetition, I value will be 5. 5 is less than or is equal to 15. Condition true. Therefore, I am printing the value of 5. Again, increment takes place. Now, I becomes what? 7. So, 7 less than 15. 7 will be printed. Again, increment, that will be plus 2. 9. Again, 9 is less than or equal to 15. 9 is printed. Again, increment. Here, 9. The value will become what? 11. So 11 is less than or equal to 15, yes children. So 11 is printed, again the value will be incremented by 2. So wherein the value of I becomes what? 13. 13 is less than or equal to 15, condition is true, therefore I am printing, again the value gets incremented. Look at here, 15, the value of I becomes 15. 15 is less than or equal to 15, children. Yes, the condition is true. On satisfying, it prints the value as 15. Okay, again I gets incremented. Now what will be in my value? That is 17. Whether 17 is less than or is equal to 15, children, the condition is false. Once the condition is false, the control comes out of this particular for loop and it goes to the next statement. So what is there in the next statement? That is get ch. That's the end of the program. So therefore output how we will get is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13 and 15. So don't you think these are all the odd numbers within the range from 1 to 15, children? Yes. Now I'll show you the execution. Coming to the programming here, I'll just open that file, saved it as I'll just try to type it. Yes, this is the program, children. Let me execute this one. I'll just compile it, 0 errors, and just I'll run the code. Okay, same code it is. When I run, I'll just give the upper limit as how much I'll give. I'll give 10, and I'll press enter. See here, these are the odd numbers. Okay. Similarly, when I give for some other number, I'll take it as input as 20. Let me take the value as 20. I'll take. See, these are all the odd numbers. Then how can I change this one program with the even numbers? Just make the changes here in the counter variable. Since I is equals to 1, every time you increment it is becoming with the odd numbers, it is incrementing by plus 2. Just change the I value here. I'll make it as 0 and just I'll save the program. Okay, and just run the code. Now this will print me all the even numbers with given the range. Just see. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, because here the counter variable I am starting with 0. So 0 plus 2 is 2, 2 plus 2, 4, 6, like that. I hope, children, this session was very interesting, the for loop, but this for loop is very important from the exam point of view. So please do study all the programs and tracing whatever I am showing you, you make a note of it. Okay, so take care of your children. Next class we shall study with the further topics. Thank you.